We'll call the April 6th, 2021 meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Call the roll, please. Yes.
I thought it was. Oh, well, let me try again then. Barnett? Bauman? Oh, okay, just got in then. Demakis?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm still here.
Okay. Fagan? Gates? Hochhalter?
Here.
Coop? Here. Leiter?
Here.
Nestal?
Here.
Offerdahl? Sessions?
Here.
Sievertson? And Wagonist.
Here.
All right.
Brian, this is Tim Bauman. I just got in, I think, probably 2 seconds after you.
Yep. And so we have a quorum.
Very good. Rise for the pledge, please.
Same with Justin Hochhalter here too.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. In the materials, the kind of standard edition now of our, I guess, mission statement, meeting process. I'm not going to read over it all, but it's in the materials every meeting now. So we will go on to approval of the March 2nd, 2021 meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes? It's moved by Commissioner Coop. Is there a second?
Bauman, so moved.
Oh, go ahead, Tim.
Second by Bauman. Sorry, second by Bauman.
Thanks. Can we turn the volume up on that a little bit?
Yeah,
So we have a motion and second. Call the roll, please.
Bauman?
Yes.
Demakis?
Yes.
Hochhalter?
yes.
Coop? Leiter?
Yes.
Nestal?
Yes.
Sessions?
Yes.
And Wagonist.
Yes.
All right.
Motion carries. Meeting minutes are approved. Did somebody just join on the Teams? I heard a ding. Okay. First item on the agenda tonight is a conditional use permit for climate-controlled storage on an application by Deanne Burns, representing Minot Storage LLC, to comply with resolution number 3621, a conditional use permit issued on June 3rd, 2019 for climate-controlled storage that specifies in condition 1C that a new or amended conditional use permit must be obtained where a change in ownership occurs. The property is known as the north 200 feet of lots 9, 10, and 11, west sublot A of lot 9, South Park Terrace 4th Edition, which is located physically at 1908 Hiawatha Street. We will turn over to staff for the report.
Thank you, Chairman Demakis and Commissioners. The property is located near the intersection of 20th Avenue Southeast and Hiawatha Street. It's Zone C2 commercial, and the future land use for the property is commercial. So the property received a conditional use permit on June 3rd, 2019, and one of the conditions was that a change in ownership would warrant an amended CUP. The property has since changed ownership, and the property owner desires to be compliant with this provision. Staff finds that the standards of section 30-3C and D are met in order to recommend approval. And staff is recommending of the approval of the amended CUP to include all conditions initially required, except for the removal of 1.C related to a change in ownership requiring amendment to the CUP. Staff does not find it necessary to have Planning Commission review a change in ownership moving forward for this particular use. And staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the commission for staff? All right. Hearing none, we will open the public hearing. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on behalf of the application? Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition? Anybody who wishes to put any input on the application? All right, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and turn it over to the commission.
Motion to approve based on staff finding of fact and conditions.
Motion to approve by Commissioner Wagnus based on findings of fact and recommendations. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner
Lighter.
Leiter, sorry. It's Tuesday. Any discussion from the commission? All right, hearing none, we will call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Tamekis,
Yes.
Holoculter, Coop, Lighter,
Yes.
Nestal,
Yes.
Sessions,
Yes.
and Wagonist.
Yes.
All right.
Carries. Next item on the agenda is request on an application from Wendy Keller representing Magic City Discovery Center and the Maya Park District as owner for a variance to utilize shared parking separated by a public street. Further, the request includes a variance to the parking lot berm and street tree requirement along the property boundary abutting Highway 83. Property is legally known as Lot 1, Block 2, Overlook Park Addition, and Outlot 31, Section 13, 15583, which is located at street address of 1545 First Street Southwest. We'll turn over staff for the report, please.
Thank you, Chairman Dominguez, members of the commission. So here's an aerial of the subject property and notification area. The property is P public zone and public semi-public on the future land use map. Take note of the irregular shape of the lot and relatively steep topography affecting the property. Elevation changes range from 15 foot to 60 feet. This is the basis for the variances being requested. So, street trees are required along all street fronting property boundaries. Berms are also required to reduce headlight glare when there is a grade difference of 2 foot or more. And finally, shared parking between lots is not allowed when separated by a public street. Just looking at some site photos. This is facing northwest from the MCDC site. So in the background, there's a car dealership and a hotel. This is facing west. From the edge of the proposed parking area, the road is not visible from this location due to topography. And most of us are very familiar with this area. This is from the street view on Broadway. So as you can see, there's quite a slope. And this is just south of the pedestrian bridge. So here are the findings of fact. Staff finds the property maintains a hardship due to topography and irregular shape, and that granting of a variance will be without substantial detriment to the public good and without impairing the general purpose and intent of the comprehensive plan. So staff is recommending approval of the application subject to the following 3 conditions. So establish a shared parking agreement between both properties. Street trees will be reduced to 25% of the requirement for Broadway, so 7 trees total will be required. That's also included in the letter of intent by the applicant, so they're amenable to that requirement. The applicant will construct a crosswalk on First Street Northwest to connect the off-site parking for the shared parking agreement. Again, that's also part of their plan, so staff will stand for questions.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the commission in regards to the report?
This is Commissioner Bauman, and I just have a comment. Mr. Van Dyke, I want to say thanks. I really like the fact that you have the shared parking agreement, or the fact that we're able to utilize parking that already exists rather than having to reinvent the wheel and go that route. So kudos to you and to the park folks for figuring out a good solution that uses the resources we already have in place.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Bauman. I'm curious, just in terms of the crosswalk, this is not, we're not talking about an elevated crosswalk across the street, are we? Just your
Correct.
standard?
It'd be at-grade crosswalk, yeah.
Thank you, right. Very good. Anything else for staff from the commission?
This is Commissioner Bauman again. Sorry, I'm talking a lot today. Mr. Van Dyke, I'm wondering if you can tell us a little bit about how the agreement or the number of 25% of the trees was reached rather than any number other than 25%.
Sure. Chairman Dominguez, Commissioner Bauman. Really, the 25% was just taking into consideration the majority of the property that had the steep slopes. Again, I said 15 foot versus 60. There's existing vegetation on there. I wouldn't say that's an exact science. It was just, there is some space to put some trees. And so just waiving the requirement entirely didn't seem appropriate. So in working with the applicant, this seemed to be a feasible path forward without putting them in a bind with having to put the 28 trees that otherwise would have been required on that steep slope.
Okay, thank you.
Very good. Anything else for staff at the moment? All right, thank you, sir. If we need you, we'll let you know. And with that, we will open the public hearing on this request. Is there anybody who wishes to speak on behalf of the application? Come on up.
Good afternoon. I'm Sean Weeks with Ackerman Esfold, and I'm representing the applicant, Magic City Discovery Center. We concur with staff recommendations. It was good to work with Mr. Van Dyke and Mr. Baumgartner on working through the application and the request. One thing I wanted to note was the paving and utility district that is going to be responsible for improving the First Street northwest right-of-way. Within their plans has a defined crosswalk that will connect the two parking areas. So that will be that would be handled through the paving district or the assessment district. And then I would be more than happy to answer any questions the commission might have.
Any questions for Mr. Weeks? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Anybody else who wishes to speak on the application? Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition? All right, seeing none, we will close the public hearing and turn the matter over to the commission.
This is Commissioner Bauman. I would actually like to make a motion that we approve this based on staff finding of fact and recommendations 1 and 3 with an edit to recommendation 2 to read will be calculated at a rate of 100%, resulting in 28 trees that can be clustered elsewhere on the property as they choose.
There's a motion by Commissioner Bauman to approve based on staff findings, fact, and recommendations 1 and 3 with a change to recommendation number 2 that requires a 100% of the trees resulting in 28 somewhere amongst the property. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner,
Sessions.
Any discussion?
This is Commissioner Bauman, and I'll just go ahead and explain myself a little bit for the rest of the commission. I first off want to say that I think the Park District and the Planning Department really did a nice job with this. Again, as I said, utilizing existing things that we already have in that location. I'm glad that you eliminated the berm requirement and the hedge parking requirement. Those are really smart things, and I was really excited to see the future that this progress or project has for that portion of our community and for our community as a whole. When I think about our landscaping requirements and the role that they play in our zoning code, it partially is a cosmetic thing, and some of it is functional, like, you know, we can use those trees to block out maybe some headlights coming from an opposite direction, and it kind of provides a little bit of visual cover. But I think that one of the big essences of that landscaping code is about quality of life and improvement and about beautifying our community. And I just don't want us to lose an opportunity to make a positive investment in our community like this. It is a children's discovery center, and nature is a pretty cool and awesome thing to discover. And I think that we're really selling ourselves short as a community if we have an opportunity to plant 28 trees there and we don't go for it. I mean, I love the idea of allowing them to plant it where it works best on the property. I think that's really wise, very prudent. And I would just love to see us not sell ourselves short, especially from one government entity to another government entity, making sure that we hold ourselves to high standards.
Thank you, Commissioner Bauman. Is there any additional discussion?
If I could ask Mr. Van Dyke, is there room for 28 trees on that property? Or will it interfere with anything that's going to be going on there?
Chairman Dominguez, Commissioner Leonard, I would defer to Sean to explain the areas where it'd be most accommodating for the tree placement. He understands the topography and the limitations better than I, and so if you don't mind, Sean, let's hand it over to you to answer that question.
All hung up here. Well, just to clarify, the landscaping requirement as it relates to the street trees on the frontage, which is First Street, and that's the area up at the elevation where we'll be placing the Discovery Center. We intend to comply fully with the requirements along our frontage. There's a piece of that lot north of the existing pedestrian bridge that is intended to be part of the Park District's master planning efforts, and at the point that that gets developed, we would leave the planting for them on that stretch. The 28 trees that we're speaking of, we actually have double frontage on this lot, so we are constrained by First Street as a right-of-way requirement, as well as on the backside we have 83 or North Broadway. And it is those 28 trees being required that we ask for some relief based on a fair amount of existing vegetation on the slope. So that's just so there's a complete understanding of that request. If it turns out that it is the recommendation and the wish of the Planning Commission to plant the entire 28, we'll look at. I'll work with Mr. Van Dyke and Mr. Baumgartner on satisfactory locations for plantings. On the south side of the planned building, we're looking at placing what we're calling a magic pathway, and it'll be an ADA compliant ramp that will allow anyone that chooses to walk it or anyone that would be in a wheelchair to descend to the back side of the building where we have a patio. And the intent would be we'd have a number of exhibits along that pathway. That would probably be an ideal spot to do some of the plantings. So I haven't formulated an opinion on exactly where they should go, but if that's, again, the desire and the recommendation for the approval, we'll find space to do it. I hope I answered your question.
Anything further from Mr. Weeks? Thank you, sir. Anybody else who wishes to respond to that question?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, hello. My name is Emily Hiddle. I'm the Assistant City Engineer. I don't want to speak for the Park District since they're not here with us tonight, but it just so happens I was at a public meeting earlier today where they did present some of their future ideas for the area north of this site, which is on the same parcel, which Mr. Weeks had talked about. So there is land. They have future plans for potentially T-ball fields, splash pad. When they get to that point, they will submit another site plan to the city, to the engineering department, to the planning department, and, you know, we would be going through the same process again. So I'm sure the Park District does fully intend to do additional tree plantings on that northern portion of their property. You know, they're just in very high-level planning stages right now, so there's certainly room for trees. I don't know right now if they would know where exactly they would want them. There's the room, but the plan's kind of not formulated enough yet. So I just thought I would share that since the Park District was sharing that with members of the public earlier today.
Very good, thank you. Any further discussion on the commission side?
This is Commissioner Bauman again, and I'm wondering if Mr. Van Dyke or Mr. Billingsley would be able to tell us if this is approved at the full amount, would the Park District have enough time to go through that planning process and then use those additional 21 trees as a, you know, have a better idea of where they would want to plant it and maybe do that within a year? Or what is the time frame again for when those trees would need to be planted?
Chairman Demakis, Commissioner Bauman. I'm confident if push came to shove that they would be able to figure out a path forward, even if it was putting a double row to the south property boundary adjacent to the church. Given, again, that if you look at the lot and the topography, it's clear. Also taking into consideration, it's actually a triple fronted property. You've got the north side, the west side, and the east side, all of which require street trees. Street trees will be required on the north, on the east. Topographical limitations are really the reasoning behind the request. So as far as any type of maintenance, things like that, it's just a different ballgame. Whether or not this is a public entity, I would have recommended the same relaxation for the street tree requirement. Also taking into consideration the existing vegetation that is along or near that vicinity. With that, I think anything and everything is possible. We're talking 21 extra trees on this site. I'm sure they can figure it out. It's just a matter of pushing them to do so. I just, again, I do believe, I think it's factual that they have a topographically challenging lot and it's irregularly shaped, and accommodating parking and all the other requirements that the city has for this development makes the landscaping on that Broadway side just that much more difficult. So I think it's a genuine hardship related to topography and the irregular shape of the lot. And also I want to premise too is that it is the applicant's responsibility to justify any relaxation and prove the hardship. So if there's a disagreement on the topography or the irregular shape or the ability of the applicant to say plant those 21 trees, then certainly just deny that particular aspect of it. It's not staff's to kind of explain. I can't speak for the applicant with regard to their hardship, other than explain the topography and the irregular shape. And I would say it's a two-phase project, which complicates things because there's a lot of unknowns, and so placement of these street trees is difficult at this time. However, I think if it was modified to distribute those 21 trees throughout the remainder of the property, I think that would provide some flexibility and allow them the ability to accomplish that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further from the commission? All right, hearing none, we will call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Demakis,
No.
Hilgalter? No. Coop? Leiter?
No.
Nestle?
Yes.
Sessions,
Yes.
and Wagonist.
No.
All right. Yep. Oh, and wait, I thought Gates wasn't here. Oh, Gates.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it's 4-5 against.
Motion fails.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I'll make a motion to approve based on staff finding of fact and recommendations.
Motion by Commissioner Wagnus to approve based on staff finding of fact and recommendation as presented. Is there a second? Second by Commissioner Coop. Any further discussion? We will call the roll.
Bauman,
Yes.
Tamekis,
Yes.
Gates,
Yes.
Hillcoulter,
Yes.
Coop, Leiter,
Yes.
Nestle,
Yes.
Sessions,
Yes.
and Wagonist.
Yes.
All right.
Motion carries. All right. That's it for the main business on the agenda. The last item we have is alternative planning commission process. From the last meeting, we had some discussions about potential consent agenda or options thereof to maybe streamline the process a little bit. And Brian has communicated that Mr. Van Dyke has got some ideas for us.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Demekis, commissioners. So we had a bit of discussion over the last month just to see what would be the most feasible and straightforward way to expedite the planning commission meetings. And so staff's come up with this option. I just want to kind of explain how this process would work. So rather than providing suggested items for consent, staff could provide suggested items to waive staff presentation. I think that would go a long way for reducing the amount of interaction. On the items where the staff presentation has been waived, the item would still be required to be announced by the chair as the item of discussion. Then the chair could immediately open the hearing and provide time for anyone from the public to provide comment. And the chair would close the meeting and request a motion to be made, just as normal. If someone were to speak on an item, staff would be prepared to present the reasoning for staff's recommendation via the staff presentation. Staff would only recommend waiver of a staff presentation where the application was clearly benign and had not received comment in opposition. Our first item would be a perfect example of where staff would recommend a waiver of staff's presentation. And I do want to end it with this. Just keep in mind the broader purpose of staff's presentation. It's not solely just a dialogue between myself and to you. It's to outline the various applications for those participating, whether in person or remotely, and ultimately provide transparency in the decision-making process. So this dialogue is all this investment in technology for a reason, so that people can see the decision-making process going on. So I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you. Is there any input from the commission on Mr. Van Dyke's presentation? I'll simply add that I think on really straightforward issues that we see a lot when it comes to a reason, a plat or a lot split, or a simple rezone, that I think that can speed things along. Ultimately, they seem to be more almost just red tape rubber stamping items that are commonplace, and it just are very straightforward matters. I don't want to see us waiving presentations on complex matters that come before us, if when we're dealing with some of those type of things. But I think overall that some meetings this could come in handy when we have we can see sometimes six lot splits in a row, and it's just the same thing, or the same development where it's 3 different parcels in the same subdivision, all having the same thing done. At the very least, potentially packaging that into one might come in handy as well. That's my thought on that. I mean, I have no issue with trying this out and seeing how it goes from my perspective.
This is Commissioner Bauman again. I'm going to jump in and I maybe catch the other side of it. I think that Mr. Van Dyke raises a really important point that the presentation by staff is not for staff's benefit or for our benefit as commissioners, especially those of us with a little bit more experience on the commission. I do think that in some ways this is about the public being able to access, whether it's watching on social media or following along and reading things and reading the agenda packet or whatever they have access to. Like there is a certain amount of redundancy that has to be there so that the public is able to speak if they want and able to educate themselves if they want. And we can have them feel that this process is as transparent as possible. Again, we're all doing fine. We have been through many of these things together, but there may be someone who, for the very first time, interacts with the Planning Commission and wants to learn more, and we need to provide that opportunity at every juncture to get our public involved with the process.
And correct me if I'm wrong, John, but you're not eliminating the item, the report, the documentation, anything from the packet. It's all there.
Correct, Chairman Dominguez, yes. So the written report, of course, would still be part of the packet that would be submitted to Planning Commission for evaluation. It would just be staff's presentation here at the Planning Commission meeting that would be potentially waived, again, for those relatively benign cases.
Mr. Chairman, I raised the possibility at the last meeting, so I'd just like to say to the city staff that appreciate you following up, and I think it's a good step forward. Thank you.
Anything further from the commission front?
Mr. Chairman?
Mm-hmm, yes.
So, Mr. Van Dyke, how would the process work then? What would the procedures be for the start of the meeting, for, my only concern is that the public does not miss an opportunity to have their voice known. And under the newer guidelines, it'd be very rapid.
Thank you, Chairman Dominguez. Commissioner Sessions. So the way that the process would work would be the only thing missing from the process would be staff's presentation. So there would still be Chairman Dominguez explaining what the item is, opening up the item for public comment. I think we all too often see that a lot of time the applicant's not here to speak for it or against it. A lot of them are benign just by the nature of them. It'd be closed, and then he would ask for a motion to be made one way or the other. So if there were questions, we'd still be available to discuss. If the staff report, if there's any additional questions, then we could stand up and explain that. But the only thing that would be missing would be, I want to get up here and go through some of these slides for, again, like the CUP, that where an ownership changes, it's relatively benign, or one lot's turning into 2 lots in an industrial park. We've seen that one this month or this year already. So things of that nature where we get no phone calls because people expect development in certain areas. And if there was any opposition, that's why I would probably hand Chairman Dominguez a list of those that have passed that threshold. We either didn't receive any comment on it whatsoever, and which staff finds is so basic in its impact to the community. So again, like I said, the 2 lot, 3-lot subs in an industrial park where this CUP amendment, where an ownership's changing. It's really not much to talk about, but here we are we're talking about it just because it's kind of, that's what we do. But the staff report would always still be there, so that'd be the only thing that's changing is I wouldn't come up and talk to you. I address the commission and I answer questions. The variances we would bring before because the hardship needs to be established and talked about. Plus, this is the final decision-making body as of yesterday when the new code is, or that's always been the case, but now CUPs as well, conditional use permits, probably the initial conditional use permit where this is the final decision being made on an application. We'll probably talk about those. Again, I think 80–90% of the ones that we presented this year are just, it's me talking, and I don't think I'm not generating any questions by the commission, and the applicant's not here to even talk about it. So don't see any harm in maybe not discussing those particular items. But we would be available just in case it turned. And if you guys have any questions, we'll still be here to talk about it. So.
And I think, when you lay out the agenda, we have the description of, the application, and then upon, what usually ends with the physical address, and then if that item is on a, essentially on a non-discussion track, pop right in the materials, here are the findings of facts and recommendations. I can read those, we can pop them up on the screen, and then it's pretty much laid forth. They're usually on those, again, on those mundane things, it's 2 or 3 recommendations. It meets, the applications meets all the requirements, and it's business as usual.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman Dominguez. That's a great point. We can definitely put the item, staff's recommendation, as the 2 slides that would be part of it. I'll just sit in my chair and push it forward when Chairman Dominguez is ready to kind of continue explaining what staff's recommendation is. So otherwise, I'd be available if more detail was necessary.
Anything further on the process discussion? All right. We need any sort of formal decision, Brian, or anything like that? No. Just give it a try next month and see how it goes. Yeah. Sounds good to me. With that, then, I see no other business on the agenda for tonight, so we are hereby adjourned. Thank you all.